See what I mean?
Did he say something offensive? Did he take an inappropriate picture? What did he do?
Jared Stillman returns September 2nd.
Okay. All right. Who's excited? Because it is September 2nd. And welcome in or welcome back or whatever you want to call it to Stillman and Company here on the 440 Sports Network across all your digital platforms, wherever you get your podcast, blah, blah, blah. You all know it. Subscribe, like, etc. Whatever you got to do. Because we are back, baby. That's right. We are back. The Stillman and Company program. And let me just say this. It is nice to be back. I just want everybody out there to know it is nice to be back. When I left 102.5 The Game, I saw all of your messages. I saw the nice ones. I saw the mean ones. I saw the ones in between. I read all the comments that were posted on Reddit. Boy, there were a lot of them. Most of them were kind of mean, but that's okay. I saw the articles written, and I even saw everybody's tweets when I would put out there, hey, I'm going to be on Mad Dog Radio on Sirius XM today. And people were saying, how could I subscribe? And now I've subscribed. And now I'm listening to you filling in for Mad Dog. Or now I'm listening to you and Caroline doing the morning show or whatever it may be. And I was incredibly, incredibly appreciative of every single one of those messages. I always said I had a loyal audience. And I've always joked about how I thought a third of the loyal audience, people that love me and love the show, a third were loyal audience that loved the show but hated me, and then a third were a third of the people that hated the show and hated me, and that I always joked that third that hated me and hated the show listened the most. But it was pretty cool. When you get as many negative comments as I get, it was pretty cool to see all the reaction of people saying, oh my God, this was my drive home. Oh my God, what am I going to do? It was pretty cool to see all of that and to see the reaction when I left the radio station and to watch it all unfold and everything else. It was pretty freaking sweet. That said, today's show is going to be taking a peek into that rear view mirror. What went down? And more importantly, the last 10 years, and looking forward to what we here at 440 Sports, which is going to be the official distributor of the Stillman and Company program, what we're going to do. For starters, it is nice to have some clarity about the future. And I don't know how many of you listened on the radio every day and are going to stick with us through YouTube, through the podcasts, through the digital channels. I am hoping that it is most of that core audience. I am aware of the fact that it is not as simple on a daily basis to get into your car, to pull up the podcast, which should be live every day around 3:30. The podcast should be available for you to download, to listen to. We're live 2:00 every day on YouTube, Monday through Friday. I understand it's not the same as getting in the car and pressing the button. But at the same time, and I have a ton of respect for what radio is. And I have a ton of respect for being on the radio and the platform that I had and everything else. I am not one of these. I was in radio. Now I'm out of radio, or I guess I'm on Sirius radio, but I'm out of terrestrial radio. And now I'm going to come on here and say, radio is dead. I'm not that guy. But at the same time, I know where the current is and I know where the future is headed. And one way or another, yes, we had podcasts out there. Yes, we're on YouTube. But one way or another, it was going to be time for me to jump out more digitally anyways. First off, I want to thank my friend Braden Gull. I've known Braden since before I was even at 102.5. I would hear him back in the day when I was still on the radio in Louisville. I would hear him on the midday 180 on 104.5. And I thought he was great. And I suggested Braden for the job when we went out looking for a morning show, and I thought he and Jason Fitz were great together. And when he left the station, we stayed in touch. Braden and I had actually talked in the past about working together over here at 440. And so when I became a free agent, I mean, the first call I made when I became a free agent was to my girlfriend, and then to Caroline, and then to Braden. I mean, I knew that, hey, if I wanted to stay in the game locally, while still doing the national stuff on Mad Dog Radio and everything else, I knew that the guy to talk to was Braden, period. And I am a big listener to the 440 podcast, especially, and I'll say this, he won't say this about me, I'll say this about him, especially the Paul Kaharski podcast. And for those of you out there that are looking for a Jared versus PK, well, I'll just say this. Keep your eyes and ears open here with our friends at 440 Sports. Again, right now, today we're on the 440 Sports YouTube page. Starting tomorrow, we'll be on the Stillman and Company YouTube page at Stillman and A-N-D Co on YouTube. Go subscribe. I would say subscribe both to 440 and to Stillman and Company, the YouTube page there, but we'll be pushing the link out, Twitter, etc. That's just semantics. Now, I want to start by talking about the new show. There will be similarities. There will be differences. Number one, this is not going to be a 4-hour show. Quite frankly, a 4-hour show on the radio was really just the same show twice, or in some cases, 2.5 times. I'd come up with a topic at 2 o'clock. I'd come up with a topic at 3 o'clock. And then I'd be thinking, okay, how do we repeat without necessarily for sure just repeating the same topics? But how do we do that for 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock? It kind of got to be a little tiring. I would see some people's messages saying, you talked about this earlier today. Right. But the guy, when you're doing radio, that gets in the car, that tunes in at 4:30 wasn't listening at 2:15. Well, this is a podcast. This is an hour show. You can go back on YouTube. You can scroll back from the beginning. There's no point in repeating the same thing for 4 hours. That's just part of the game of how that's played and how this is played. So the hope is we'll be live every day at 2 o'clock, Monday through Friday. We'll be live at 2 o'clock and have everything uploaded and ready to go by 3:30. So that for 1 hour, with very few commercials, very, very few commercials for your commute home, you'll get the same show that you loved or that you hated or that you liked, but you hated the host. Same coverage, same conjecture, same gossip, same everything else. Now, there will be some changes because at the end of the day, this is a podcast. This is not a radio show. And we'll learn through those subtle differences and changes as a collective group. I hope that sounds well. Now, the similarities are it's the same show. It'll be my takes. It'll be your reaction. It'll be YouTube chat. We may work in a text line here the way we did on the show. Don't think I'll be able to take calls, but hey, you know what? We'll figure it out as we go. And it will be Titans. It will be Preds. It will be SEC. And quite frankly, it'll be whatever the hell I want to talk about. I mean, did anybody else watch Bill Belichick get his ass kicked last night? I did. And I plan to have a lot of the people that you used to hear on the Stillman and Company program on this program. And we'll expand it out even more. And I mean, when I was talking to Braden about bringing my show to 440, he was telling me about some of the things that they had in the works. Most notably, the Hot Read podcast now has James Foster, No Flags Film. I've been wanting to have James Foster on the radio, on Stillman and Company, to break down the tape for years. I've thought about how can I get James Foster? We're going to try to have James Foster on the show. We're going to break down some of the film. I'm going to say, this is what I think. This is what I feel like I'm seeing. James Foster, you watch the tape. You tell me. Nick Suss on 440. We'll have him on the program. And we'll do kind of the same stuff that we've always done. And it will essentially be the same show. Today, Jared's pissed off about what? Sometimes I'm happy. Sometimes, who knows? And again, the plan for this program will to be live every day, Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock, and for everything to be uploaded by 3:30. There are still some details we're working through, but I am planning on being live as soon as the Titans games are over. Now, it may be difficult trying to figure out if I actually go to the game, if I'm going to do this, but I'd love to have a Stillman post-game live. So instead of just, hey, Titans lose, which is probably going to happen a lot this year. Maybe they win. Who knows? Boom. Let's go. React. Let's get your thoughts. Let's get my thoughts. Let's go over the game. Let's go over Callahan. Let's go. Let's play the press conference live. Again, we'll figure all this out as we go, but that's a plan that I'd like to have starting probably on Sunday. If you're a car commuter, again, I know it's simple to get in the car and just boom, click. But Apple, Spotify, whatever podcast, subscribe to Stillman and Company for your commute. You know, the podcast page, apparently it takes a couple days to get that thing up and rolling, but once it is subscribe to the YouTube page, which again will be starting tomorrow at Stillman and Co with the and on YouTube. And then we'll be flooding the zone. And I've got a new social media director. A lot of people loved our teaser video that I put out last week. That was her. So we'll be, again, YouTube Shorts. I started a TikTok at the behest of my girlfriend, who is the reigning Canadian CMA Industry Person of the Year. So she knows a thing or two about marketing. So I guess that's what we're doing here. Also, let me say this. As fired up as I am about this new venture, yesterday was the first time in my life that I ever had to put a dog down. And we said goodbye to our 10-year-old Australian Shepherd, Stevie. And it has had a massive effect on our hearts. And so if I'm just not ripping everybody's ass today, the way that you're used to me ripping everybody's ass, the way you think I normally would, just know that my heart right now, as much as I love this program, and I used to think my identity was all about being the sports taker and the thoughts and the show and everything else, it's a little different now. With a son, with what was 2 dogs, now unfortunately only 1. So again, I just keep Lindsay. Her and Stevie had been together forever. Keep her in your thoughts. Keep us in your thoughts. And just know that as we go. Now, what you all came here for. There will be plenty of time over the week to discuss Cam Ward, to discuss the Titans preseason, to discuss the crazy things Brian Callahan has said, to discuss the fact that the Titans are going to put out a punt returner who, quite frankly, has never really returned punts to start the year on the road at Denver on Sunday. Boy, what could go wrong there? There's plenty of time for that. There's a reason why we started this before the start of the football season. And today I'm going to address the elephant in the room. And it is probably what most people are here to see. And it is probably what most people want to know. And that is my departure from 1025 The Game. This is going to be the one time that I do this. And then after that, we're done. But I've always talked about being honest, being transparent, and being fair on the radio. And this is no different. I do feel like I owe this to you all. It would be very easy for me to say, well, you know, that was business and we couldn't come to an agreement and I don't want to get into that. I could do that. But would that make any sense? Again, I try to be genuine. I try to be honest and transparent. For somebody that gossips about everybody else's contract and how everybody else feels about their team or their coach or their situation or their playing time, or would it really be fair for me just to say, well, we had a good 10 years, the end, move on? And not only that, this is a show. And while I don't contrive takes, I know some people think I do. I know some people think it's all shtick. I know some people say, Jared Stillman, he just thinks whatever is negative, he's going to say it to get people riled up for clicks. I'm not doing that. I've never done that, and I'm not going to start doing that. Again, if I think it, I say it. The end. So I feel like I owe this explanation to you of what happened between me and my 10-year former employer. So let's go back to May of 2024, because I feel like that's a good place to start. Again, I had 10 great years at 1025, whether it was me starting off on 94.9 with Tom Callahan, which was, and I love Tom Callahan, good guy, but it was a disaster. And then us moving to 1025, and then me doing a solo show for 3 hours, and then Jared and the GM, and then the GM leaves, and then he passes away, and then I do the show solo, and then Caroline comes in, and then I go back to doing the show solo. It was awesome. It was a great 10 years. And there's nothing that I would take back. Sure, there are always things I might want to do differently, but there's nothing that I regret as far as what just I felt like was an awesome opportunity and really the thankful start of my career that took me to Mad Dog Sports Radio on Sirius XM and gave me a national platform and had me go viral random times, whether it was getting into it with Deshaun Watson or the Aaron Rodgers rumors, which were correct about him buying a house, raw land, I guess. In Williamson County, which turned up a total shitstorm, which, by the way, guess what? We get to use those words now. But it was a good 10 years. But let's go back to May of last year. The Predators have been knocked out of the playoffs against Vancouver. My ratings on the radio, which are things you cannot talk about when you're on the radio, but again, other than Sirius XM, I'm not on the radio. My ratings were crushing it, unlike anything that the station had ever seen before. And things were good. In March of that year, I had the number one show, Min 2554, which on our station, that would be like Vanderbilt making the SEC championship game. No disrespect to Vanderbilt. Then all of a sudden in May, the Predators get knocked out on a Friday night. On Saturday, I find out I'm having a kid. Hey, it happens, right? So I find out I'm having a kid. My kid is due on December 20th. My contract is up December 15th. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? Let's get a new contract. We're crushing it in the ratings. Everybody seems to be very happy. And I've got a kid due 5 days after my contract ends. So things had changed a little bit at the station. We had a management change. Our sales manager was promoted to general manager. And Chase McCabe, our program director, told me that he was going to handle my next contract negotiation, which, to be honest, I was a little skeptical of. I usually had just done the contracts with the general managers, and we had gone back and forth and usually came to an agreement, shook hands, the end. Including, by the way, one in 2018 when I agreed to a new contract where the number the general manager told me in the office was $5,000 less than the contract. And in the end, I just said, you know what? And she, to her credit, she was a great general manager, Jana Hampton. I loved her. She called me and was like, oh my God, I totally screwed up. I'm so sorry. I said, you know what? Just go ahead. Don't worry about it. We'll just forget about the $5,000. We're happy with where we are. Let's get the deal done. So now they're changing, right? Now I'm negotiating with the program director or whatever. Again, I was skeptical. So in June or whatever, I start telling the people that I work with that I'm having a child. Whether it was the on-air staff, whether it was the management, I start telling people last year during the summer, I'm having a child. And I said to Chase, let's get a deal done. I want to be here. I think you want to have me. Let's get a deal done. And let's get it done. You know, I know these things take time. So if we start talking in the summer, maybe we'll have something ironed out by Halloween or Thanksgiving. And then that way, when my kid's due on December 20th, and he was born on December 11th, when my kid's due, I'm not going to be stressing out about not having a contract and also having a kid at the same time. So I signed a 3-year contract at the end of 2021, and I honored that contract. And I probably outperformed that contract. But I didn't ask for a raise. I didn't go to them in the middle of it in March when we were getting great numbers. And I didn't say March, April, May, the football season. We crushed it during last football season. I did not go to them and say, hey, I'm doing too well. Let's get me a raise here. I didn't do that. I never did that. Just like I didn't ask for a raise when Floyd Reese got sick and left the show, and I was hosting the show solo. And so I'm doing the show by myself, and I didn't ask for a raise. I was making the same money I was making doing the show with Floyd. So they probably saved a little bit of money on that, but I didn't go asking for it. The way I looked at it was, when I do the contract, I fulfill the contract, and then we go from there. So it's the summer of 2024, kid on the way, ratings, digital numbers, etc., better than ever. And I just wanted a fair deal. And they wanted a fair deal. And we talked. And we talked. And we talked some more. And finally, I sat down with Chase and the general manager, and we talked. I said I wanted a deal. Hey, I like it here. I like doing 4 hours a day. I like being on an afternoon drive. I like anchoring the radio station. I like doing the Titans pregame shows. I really liked going to Twin Peaks. I liked all of that. Let's keep it going. They said they liked it. They wanted to keep it going. And meanwhile, this is all during last fall, and I'm hosting the show, and we crushed it. We got a 10.1 rating for the fall quarter. Just for comparison's sake, and I am not throwing anybody under the bus when I say this. When I got to 1025 the game, and I still have the email, we had a 0.7 in afternoons. So a 10 share on a station that, again, I love that station. I never bitched about this publicly, and really not even privately, when I was there with signal limitations. A 10 share. We crushed it. You do that in New York City, you're making $2 million. But as far as a new contract was concerned, we still weren't making progress. Contract runs out in December. Jack is born. And we both decided we were going to continue negotiating in good faith. Now, if anything in this entire process angered me, it is this. At some point this spring, and I can't remember if it is April, I can't remember if it was May, Chase and our general manager sat me down and said, look, the money that you're looking to make, we can't pay you. So we encourage you to look elsewhere. And if you do find another job, we will celebrate it, and we will have a goodbye show, and so on and so forth. In fact, they compared it to Caroline. A couple years ago, when Caroline got her job at Yahoo, and she's doing a fabulous job, but when Caroline got her job at Yahoo, and she told me, you know, what they were going to pay her at Yahoo, I'm like, well, you got to take that job because they're not going to match this here at the radio station. And they didn't, which, again, we're talking about Yahoo Sports here. So it was a job she had to take. She took the job, and they had a great goodbye show for her. And I did cry when she came on my show, but I almost cried listening to her goodbye show. So they sat me down and they said, hey, we can't pay you what you deserve to be paid, but if you go look elsewhere and you get something better, we'll support it. And again, told me that we'd have a goodbye show. As I think many of you are now well aware, I did not have a goodbye show on 1025 The Game. So we know how this story ends now. But at that point, when they sat me down and they said that, I started taking interviews. I started doing more auditions. I started hosting a lot more on Sirius XM. And apparently in the end, they didn't like that. Or they, I guess, perceived that to be a threat. So we're working towards a resolution. Management has told me we can't afford to pay you what you're looking to be paid, which I think still would have been below market rate, to be completely honest with you guys. Now, it would have been a lot more than I had been making, and it probably would have been a lot more than other people, but this was not what I think top of the market money was. And it wouldn't have been a huge discount, but it would have been a discount. The entire time they kept giving me the, hey, give us some time. We're working on sales here. We're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. Then we'll figure it out. We'll get it done. And I'm like, okay, guys, like, we've been negotiating this for 6 months and now my contract's up. And now you guys are telling me go look it up. Okay, fine. And here's what never left my head. And I hope he's okay with me saying this. Darren McFarland, when he left the radio station, he got let go by the radio station, which I don't think anybody should know, but they put that in an article in the paper. When he got let go by the radio station, I talked to Darren. And this stuck with me. And I don't even think I've had a conversation, like an extended conversation with Darren, who I really like and I do consider to be a friend. I haven't had an extended conversation with him since then. But he said to me at that time, he said, you have a real shot in this industry and you need to strike while the iron is hot. And I felt like the message when he told me that was, don't get too comfortable. Like, don't get too comfortable and think big. And so, again, I probably could have just done the same stuff over and over and over again, made the same money, did the same. But I'm sitting here thinking, like, I'm 35. I had a kid. Like, if I'm going to grind and do the 4 hours every day that I was doing, I've got to stand up for what I felt like I had accomplished. I chose that. Instead of going along to get along, I chose, we're going to have a better deal. And so when the news hit that I was leaving the station, there were a lot of people that felt really sad for me and reached out and said, oh, I'm so sorry this happened to you. And, some people would say, like, I've taken them off my presets. And I didn't feel that way. Like, I wasn't sad in the end. Did I want to get a deal done? Yes. But I wasn't angry to the point that it was like, screw them, they won't, I'll show them. I didn't feel that way. I just looked at it like business. I acknowledged that's what it was. I had a product they were paying for, and I valued it at a certain price, a price I thought was more than fair. They apparently didn't. And again, that's business. That happens. This is not a normal job. This is a performance. We're just like the players, right? You have a contract and the team pays you X amount of dollars. And then when it's time to renegotiate the contract, you renegotiate the contract. That's business. In fact, that Thursday night that the news broke, and man, it was pretty crazy. I went into the station at 12:30, 1 o'clock, something like that. I went into the station and I was out of there by about 1:40. And I went and picked up my son, and my girlfriend, she was going to the airport because, well, one of us in the household has to work, right? And she was going to, I want to say it was Calgary. It was Calgary or Edmonton or one of those. I don't know. And so somebody has to go hang out with Blake Shelton. That was her. So she goes, and I end up back home with my parents. And I kind of told my parents, like, hey, can you guys watch my kid for a little bit? Because this is going to break. And when it breaks, there's going to be a lot of phone calls and text messages. And of course, my parents, who are unbelievable grandparents, when it comes to helping out with that stuff, they were like, yeah, we got it. So that Thursday night, the news broke. I was actually surprised. I wasn't surprised by all the people that reached out. I wasn't surprised by people telling me that I had a great show, or I wasn't surprised by the haters saying, oh, thank God, Jared Stillman's gone. He sucks. I wasn't surprised by any of that. But I was surprised at how relieved I was. Like, I was actually surprised. I think I was kind of happy it was over. And I also felt a real strong sense of excitement that I was ready for something else. And I had been grinding really, really hard. I know nobody wants to hear somebody that sits in a chair and talks into a microphone for 4 hours a day talk about how hard they work. I understand that. But it's a daily 4-hour performance. That's what a show is. It's a show. I see these artists all the time that'll have a concert and they'll load up the bus and they'll drive to the next stop and they'll do the show again. And if you think it's just them getting out there and singing for an hour and a half, that's not it. You've missed the meet and greets. You've missed the radio rooms. You've missed all the chatting and discussing and sound checking, and you've missed all of that. And those are people that are playing the same song every night, just in a different city. This is 4 hours a day of new stuff every day. And in order to do it at the level that I find to be, that I'm accountable to, that the level that I'm going to put my name on, I was grinding really, really, really hard. And so when that stopped, like when that was over, and I no longer was having to grind the 4 hours, I mean, there was a sense of comfort for me in that. And again, a sense of relief. I also knew, and this was, in the offing, no matter what, I knew I needed to get more into the digital space. The YouTubes, the TikToks, the YouTube shorts, the part of it is my girlfriend is a marketer, but the other part is look at what's happening with Barstool Sports. Look at what's happening with Alex Cooper, bussing with the boys, what Clay Travis did with Outkick. Look at what's happening there. And I needed to be, in my opinion, more into the digital and maybe less into 2010, which was, all right, everybody turn on the radio. So again, it was business. They thought I was valued at a certain price. I thought something else. And let me say this on the overall macro level, looking at the last 10 years at sort of one time. I don't think there's any real animosity between the radio station and I had 10 great years there. I did what nobody thought was humanly possible. I'm once told George Plaster claimed nobody could get a 5 share on that station. And again, I finished last football season with a 10. But I also had my own frustrations about how the program could be elevated more. So I wish that station, led by Bud Walters, who owns it, my former boss, and I still consider Bud Walters a friend. And I will forever be grateful for the opportunity that Bud Walters gave me. And I'll forever be grateful for all the negativity I'm sure he heard over the years from people saying, you got to get that fat ass off the air. He just runs his mouth and talks shit. And you got to get rid of him. And for 10 years, he had my back. And I still consider him a friend. So I don't have any real animosity there. And the guys on the air, I freaking love those guys. I'm not rooting for their failure. I'm not really rooting for their success either. People would say to me like, that station's going to fail without, I don't know. But more importantly, I don't really care. Like it's not my station. I don't own it. Now it was my team, but at the same time, like people change teams. But those guys that are on the air there, those are good men. And so I really do wish them all the best, and whatever happens to the station and whatever happens to the future and those guys, and that's their business. That's not my business. So Joe and Robbie and Adam and Willie and Derek and those guys, like I really do. I love them. I thought we had an incredible culture, which I'll get to in a second. I thought we had an incredible culture. So I don't have a ton of animosity there. Now, there is what I didn't like. And that is what happened on the actual day that the radio station and I broke up. I showed up to work on July 31st thinking there would be a radio show. I expected to host a radio show. I had cut clips that day, which again goes back to the grind. All those audio cuts, all those, for the most part, that was me producing and essentially managing every day my own show. And then Ian, I loved Ian and I still love Ian. During the show, Ian was as good as anybody at coming up with stuff and catching things on the fly and cutting it up. But when it came to just the day-to-day, I felt like I had to do that because I had to hear the audio to know what it was I was going to be talking about. I wasn't good at somebody telling me, oh, we've got a soundbite of Brian Callahan saying, like, I need to hear it. I need to know it. I need to feel the context of it. So I did all that shit myself. So I cut clips from the John Robinson interview that Chase and Joe did that day. I mean, I thought I was going to work to host a show. So Chase asked me if I could come in. Now, I didn't really go to the radio station to do the show much. I did it from home. I'm sure that rankled some feathers, but I was doing 4 hours. Everybody else was doing 3. I had built a studio in my house. I mean, hey, guys, it's 2025, and I was working without a contract. I'll work from home. So Chase had texted me. He asked me if I could come in, which I did. So when I go in there, I knock on the door to the general manager's office. It's Chase and Sean Fort, the general manager. And Bud Walters comes up the stairs. And again, I've worked for Bud Walters now for 10 years. And I do. I love that man. And I'll always love that man. But I guess they had taken it upon themselves to just decide they weren't going to get a deal done. And they wanted to move forward with a new lineup because it was football season. Now I asked them, I said, what's your new lineup going to be? Like, so what's this, what's this new lineup you guys are so excited about for football season? What's this? I'm thinking in my head, like, is it going to be Kaharski? Is it going to be TD? Is it going to be, what's it going to? And then 5 minutes after I walked out of the room, they wouldn't tell me what the lineup was going to be, but 5 minutes after I walked out of the room, apparently it all leaked out and I knew what it was going to be. And it was Jake Lyman. And let me say this, it was Jake going into the mornings and then the other shows moving up. I love Jake. And Jake's a very talented broadcaster. Jake is a great kid. He really is. And Jake texted me and said, hey, I had been told I was going into the lineup. I didn't know that was going to. And I texted Jake back and I was like, Jake, go get him, babe. Like, this wasn't about you. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about. But it's not exactly like they brought in Colin Cowherd or paid Colin Cowherd prices. So I kind of got it. When I saw what the new lineup was, I was like, okay, I got it. But that's not what pissed me off. I think what really pissed me off was, had we agreed we weren't going to see eye to eye on a new contract, fine. I get it. And I would have walked away. If they had said, hey, we cannot pay you $1 more, so we're not going to sign you to a new contract, I would have left the station. But what happened to the goodbye show they told me about? 10 years? Very loyal audience? The highs and the lows that we went through together? What happened to that goodbye show? And then, as I was in the meeting with those guys, we had an agreement that we would hold off on making any announcements until Friday. This was Thursday. And they said, hey, don't leave the room and don't go out tweeting and say, hey, I've left the station. Don't go running to the paper. Don't go whatever. We're going to announce this tomorrow. And I said, okay. Because it is pretty big news. And I thought, hey, this is the kind of news that some people probably need to know before everybody else does. So I was in agreement with them about how we'll handle this. Today, we'll just act like I was sick or I was out or whatever. And then tomorrow we'll make an announcement. But apparently that's not what happened. Because as I said, I called my girlfriend first. And by the time I was off the phone with her, I was getting text messages. I was getting people from the other station calling me saying, what happened? And I'm like, what happened? I thought this was going to all go down tomorrow. So I promised I wouldn't walk out the door and start leaking any info, and I hadn't, which meant the leaks weren't coming from me. So now I've got to craft a statement as soon as possible. People are starting to speculate about what went down, who said what I got to talk to my parents. I got to talk to my agent. I texted my boss at Sirius. I said, hey, can you give me a buzz when you get a chance? And this guy's pretty busy. Today, he launched Stephen A. Smith's new show. And he launched a new show with Katie Nolan. So this is a guy who's pretty busy. And so now I'm texting him saying, hey, can you buzz me when you get a chance? And he calls me back and he says he immediately wants to know what's happened because the news has already hit. And I'm sitting there thinking, I thought we had an agreement that we weren't going to discuss any of this until Friday. And now I'm on my heels having to figure out what all went down. And the leaks didn't come from me. So I come to find out what had happened was, I guess they didn't have a fill-in show ready that day. So they ran ESPN radio, which was an automatic red flag to anybody listening. It's the summer. If you knew that you were going to that day in the contract negotiations because you didn't think you could pay me any more money and you didn't think that I would take a deal and you wanted to launch your new lineup, fine. But they didn't have a fill-in show ready, so they ran ESPN radio. Then people went to the website. And apparently before I had even left the building, I was completely scrubbed of the website. So now it looks like something fishy had gone down. And that really pissed me off. But at the same time, I actually think I found some comfort in that. Because the truth was, when I think about what we built at 1025, the people who I think really built that station and who had turned it into what was, for the most part, weren't there anymore. Ryan Porth was in Chicago, our former program director. Jana Hampton, who created Jared and the GM, works for Dave Ramsey. Dennis Guazdon, who was the general manager when we started Robbie and Rex Road with Porth, he was gone too. And we made some internal promotions at the radio station that were done, I think, out of convenience over qualifications. And just seeing how badly, I guess, they botched their own plan, it relieved me that I was no longer there having to deal with that anymore. So that really pissed me off. And then there was one other thing that really, really irked me. I didn't do any interviews for a while talking about what happened with me at the station or what was next or anything like that. I was on Sirius XM pretty much every day after I left the radio station. And I told the bosses at Sirius, like, hey, somebody might call in. If they ask, I'm just going to move on and go to the next point or whatever. But I put out a statement and I felt as if it was the truth. And then I saw an article in the Tennessean. Why Jared Stillman left 1025 the game. And there was a quote from the radio station, and they're from Chase McCabe. It's a very nice quote. But I was really disappointed that quote didn't come from Bud Walters. Again, this guy had employed me for 10 years. But when I had real shit going on in my life, it was Bud Walters who I went to talk to. Lindsay was so excited when we were pregnant with Jackson. She wanted so badly to post. We went to the Bahamas for vacation. Ran into Brian Callahan and his family down there. Lindsay let it slip that we were having a child when we were still kind of keeping that to ourselves. But we took photos, pregnancy photos or whatever. And Lindsay had a post and she was ready. And I said, let's put it off. Let's wait. And then when I got back from the Bahamas or Canada or something that summer, I told her she could announce it. But I said, wait, I got to talk to Bud Walters first. We cannot make an announcement if I don't talk to Bud Walters. When I had a discussion with another radio station in town. You can probably guess who. The one thing I said to them was, no matter what happens in any discussion, I am not going to screw that man over. And I stand by that today. And if people say bad things about Bud Walters, I'll defend him to the hill. But it disappointed me that the quote in the paper didn't come from him. And I understand he hires people that work for him, that I get it. But I guess I looked at the 10 years like I wasn't just some pawn in the organization. And apparently, I guess it was. Or at least that's how it felt. And so those two things, really three, the promise of a goodbye show and the lack of one, the botched plan on rolling this out, and then the fact that the owner wasn't the one who made the comments, that's what really irked me in the end. Other than that, it was 10 great years. There's one day that I wish maybe I'd handled a little bit better in the past. But I've been there for 10 years. And how can I gossip about everybody else's sensitive business situations and then not be able to handle my own? And that one day that I wish we had handled a little bit better, I kept thinking in my head, they told me they wanted me to have a goodbye show. Then they told me they wanted me to look for other jobs, and if I got it, they were going to celebrate it. Then they told me that they felt threatened that I was looking at other jobs. I don't know. Was that like a test or something? I don't know. But you tell me you're going to give me a goodbye show, and then you don't give me a goodbye show. And then you tell me, well, you can record 2 minutes or something, and we'll play that. And I actually thought about doing that because, damn it, I love the audience. But then I said, no, we're broken up. You don't get to decide what you do with me and what I say to the people who listen to the show. But I think what really disappointed me was, while in radio, they really don't give goodbye shows because there's a fear that if you give a goodbye show, there's a huge fear that they're going to go on the air and say, fuck them. If you didn't think I could handle that, you didn't think I could do a goodbye show, you didn't think I could say, hey, you know, we just were unable to come to a contract agreement, but I've loved my time here and I'm thankful for all the people that I've worked with over the years. And it's been a blast of 10 years. And, you know, Floyd and everything he meant, and Caroline and everything she meant, and Ian and everything he meant, and this whole crew. If you didn't think I could handle that professionally, especially when I am already on Sirius XM. So if I say something off the wall crazy, like that's probably going to get me in trouble there, then maybe I wasn't the guy that should have been running your afternoons for 10 years. Maybe you had the wrong guy. Because at the end of the day, I felt like they made a business decision look personal. And again, in full transparency, I hugged Bud Walters on the way out. I actually look back on this, and I'm disappointed by the fact that I don't know if it's that they couldn't pay me more. I don't know if it's that they didn't want to pay me more. I truly am of the belief that they may not have been able to pay me what they were currently paying me. I have no idea about their business. Again, that's their business, not mine. But it's just a theory that I've had. And yet, I think to myself, like, after 10 years, if you're going to tell me we want you to look at other opportunities, we support you, we believe in you, we want you to take the next step, shouldn't I get a say? And when it's time, if I want to end it right there, or if we want to end it, or if we want to, with, again, knowing that if it turns into a screw you, no screw you, then you can just say, okay, fine, you're out. We tried, but it wasn't like that. And I felt as if I showed the station a lot of respect throughout the process. I didn't go running to the press. I didn't go telling people, certain stuff for what I didn't do any of that. And I maybe felt that respect was not reciprocated. but I can live with that. I mean, the Titans wouldn't even let Floyd pack up his own office. So that's the breakup story. For everybody who wants to know what happened, that's what happened. And I heard what everybody said, and that the guys over at 104.5 were celebrating. And you know what? They should be. Their lives probably just got a lot easier. But at the same time, like, I want to set the facts straight here. I don't want the station's effort to scrub me off the website as if I was some sort of STD to really overshadow what happened for 10 years. Because when I got there, I was a complete and total nobody. I was a sidekick doing radio in Louisville, Kentucky. And in 2 years, I was hosting Drive Time with the former general manager of the Titans while the Predators were on their way to the Stanley Cup final. That's pretty freaking cool. And that's not something that everybody gets in their own hometown. And I don't get that if they didn't take a chance on me. I mentioned Floyd and Caroline and Ian in my statement that I released because they were so important to me. But my biggest accomplishment at the station, and I've told people this off the record, I think I tried to put it there in the statement a little bit. My biggest accomplishment, when I look back at the 10 years at 102.5, was really about the team, the players. And that's because our culture, man, when I got there, the culture at the station was terrible. You walk in the door and you felt like, man, everybody here used to be at a better station and now you're at a second-tier station. And when we were there, like, there was real power in that building. I mean, we got real ratings. And that was because everybody got on board and was pulling the rope in the same direction. And so it sucks not being teammates anymore with Robbie or Joe or Willie or Derek or Adam or Caroline. I mean, that's a great group of people and a great group of hosts. And we cared about each other a lot. We really cared about each other. Like, I'm telling you, I've worked at stations, and I know there are stations out there where the people hate, the people hate each other. Like, they don't even talk. Like, they'll leave the studio and the other people will leave the studio. And I've worked stations like that. It's not fun. I mean, it's fine, but it's not fun. This was a station where everybody loved each other. I mean, I know people would probably ask Joe, do you guys really hate each other? No. I mean, Joe says some dumb shit and I say some dumb things and we yell at each other and disagree, but no, we don't hate each other. So that's the stuff, we had a great culture and we cared about each other a lot. And I miss that. And I love those guys. And I have no animosity towards them. I feel incredibly grateful to have been on a team with those caliber of people. We had some really great salespeople, still do, that work there at the station, promotions, operations, that I did enjoy working with. But there's no kind of relationship, I believe, like that of your teammates. And I thought that our relationship as a group, I called it a take-shaming culture. I actually heard Buck one day on 104.5 trying to talk about, we should pick a fight with 3HL, but who knows how they'll take it. And I'm like, man, at our station, we called it a take-shaming culture. We just rip on each other, but everybody knew that everybody respected each other. So if Joe said something stupid and I ripped it, I knew that Joe didn't take it personally. When the midday show, which is now their afternoon show, when they would rip my ass, I didn't take it personally. I'd just be like, you're wrong. And I loved that. And I really, really valued that. And then the recurring crew, Trevor, Corey Curtis, Chris Sanders, TD, Jared versus Joe, Fitz, Withrow, everyone else. It was great. I never felt the need, outside of a here and there, this guy's got a story or this coach is going to come on. I never felt the need just to put a guest on. I'm like, we're going to put the same 7 people on, and they're going to become recurring characters, and we're going to get into it, and we're going to laugh, and we're going to have a good time. And that's how I felt with all of those guys. They were great. They were great to work with. They were great to have on the program. They were great. But like Derrick Henry going to the Ravens, it's time for me to try to go off and win my own Super Bowl. And the truth is, and I think they know this too, I probably couldn't do it at 102.5 the game. It's also kind of a weird feeling when your job is to be on the radio and your contract ends up not being extended, or you end up not coming to an agreement, and the negotiations end and you're not on the radio anymore. And it's like, yes, I'm not on the radio anymore, but I'll be on the radio tomorrow at 5 a.m., which I was with Caroline the next day on Sirius. And because of that, I thank Sirius XM and Mad Dog Radio. They really embraced me this summer. Like, I called Sirius XM, I called the bosses, and I said, guys, because when I called them, the news had already broken that I'd left the station, and they said, what happened? I said, nothing. I said, we just couldn't come to an agreement. And at the end of the day, what I wanted and what they wanted, I guess, just weren't the same things. So that's what happened. But I wanted them to know, hey, I'm not asking for a job. I'm not calling you right now saying, hey, I left the radio station. Now put me on after Stephen A. I did not do that. And I wasn't asking for more shifts, but they embraced me and they put me on a bunch. And I love that network, and I love the people on it. And I was up in New York with Sirius for a day, and the people there, they're awesome. So I'm going to continue down that road and that path and the national vibe. And look, the reason that this podcast is so important to me with 440 Sports and Braden and this show is because I personally I really want to still talk Titans and still talk Preds and still talk SEC. I was on Mad Dog on Monday morning, and we talked about Alabama, and we talked about Arch, and we talked about, but I can't get on there and talk about Cam Ward every day. You can't do a segment on Mad Dog Radio about Brian Callahan and some of the doofus stuff that he's said and done. And so I wanted to keep that connection. And I know there were a lot of you that listened on your way home, and I would love to give you the option of you continuing to listen on your way home. So as far as this is concerned, daily, Monday through Friday, Titans, Preds, SEC, you know it. My expectation, and this may take a couple of days for all this to get ironed out, but my expectation is that we'll have the audio up by 3:30 every day. So that hopefully when you get home or when you get in the car on your way home or however you commute, you can listen. And the video will be live 2:00 every weekday. We're also going to launch an interview podcast called Jared Stillman Gets Personal, which will have these long form interviews intermittently. It was something that I was thinking about doing at the radio station, probably would have been part of the next contract, but we never really got there. And that'll be on demand. And I am really looking forward to starting that Jared Stillman Gets Personal podcast. And then, of course, we'll hit the NFL topics as well. By the way, I guaranteed that Micah Parsons was not going to get traded, and, well, I look like an idiot. The truth is, I don't want you to change your habits. And I remember when I changed my habits in 2014 when Clay Travis, before he went into politics, when Clay Travis left 3HL. I loved that show. I mean, I tell people that move to town and listen to what 3HL is now, and I say this with all due respect, but whatever. That show, what it used to be, I mean, I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and again, Louisville's Eastern time. If it was 4:13 Eastern, I'd be like, oh my God, I have missed 14 minutes of Clay Travis on 3HL and Blaine. No disrespect to Mickey, who is a great guy and I consider a friend, but it wasn't the same show when Clay left. I don't want you to change your habits. Maybe it's a selfish thing. I don't know. I want to be the voice you hear on your drive home. And we're going to be a lot more engaged socially than ever before. And again, that includes on TikTok. And I'm not going to be one of these guys that doesn't pretend that being on the radio doesn't matter, because I love the radio. And I love the idea of a guy after a long day at work, or gal, getting in the car and just click. But it is 2025. And I'm of the belief that if they want to find you, they can find you. Again, it's how I listen to Boston radio every afternoon. So with that, I think our first edition on 440 Sports of the brand new Stillman and Company, and the one difference between the two is I decided, even though it's really the same show, we're going to do one thing a little different. No, we're not going to go over whose celebrity birthday it is. No. We're going to replace the and sign in Stillman and Company with and, A-N-D. So that's the difference here. But we'll be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And this time, when we're back, we will get into the Titans. And we will get in to everything else that's been going on. But I felt like you all that have been with me deserved an explanation. And I hope I gave it to you. So be sure to hit the subscribe buttons here on the video feed. Be sure to subscribe on your podcast when that launches. On Twitter, at Jared Stillman. Again, tomorrow's show will come from, instead of the 440 Sports YouTube page, it will also be on 440 Sports YouTube page, but it will be on the YouTube page at Stillman and Co. Stillman, A&D, Co. Subscribe, please. Thank you. And apparently I'm now on TikTok at Stillman and Company. Tomorrow, the Titans have a rookie coach. Excuse me, they have a rookie quarterback. They have a coach on the hot seat. They have Jeffrey Simmons running around unchecked. And we get back to what we do. 440 Sports. We'll see everybody tomorrow, right here at 2.